Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Wine with Jimmy channel here on the world of YouTube. Delighted to have you on board here on this wine educational channel. This is all about the world of wine, but helping you get more from it. It's especially designed for those of you that are studying the world of wine. So here we have a series called The Wines of the World for the WSET Level 4. That's the diploma. And this is the D3 section. And so this is France, and this is south of France. So welcome to Series 2. So the south of France is split into 4 series, a manageable 4 series. And then Series 2 here, you'll see is split into 6. So this is part 2. Following on from part 1, which was on the IGP of the area, now we're looking at the AOC. So AOC Introduction and Languedoc. And this is the end of the free content. So parts 3 through to 6 will only be available on my e-learning portal. That's over at www.winewithjimmy.com. So if you have any comments or questions or concerns during this video, please do get in touch. You can comment right below this video. And of course, whilst you're down there, there's a couple of extra buttons you can click, like the subscribe button and of course the like button, just because it does help. And of course, at the bottom of every slide, if you are social media inclined, you can use one of the handles you see at the bottom of every slide. Okay, let's rock and roll looking at Languedoc. So we're going to go into an introduction of the AOC, and then we'll go into the specifics behind the Languedoc AOC. So first of all, the appellation requirements include quite detailed rules about varietal composition for all types of colours of wine, hence why we've got all different types of grape colours here on the slide. And this makes a quite firm distinction between the principal varieties and then other varieties. So a principal variety, of course, being a major variety, which must be included. So all the following explanations that I'll be going through is going to be talking more about red production in Languedoc. And that's because really across most of the appellations, pretty much all of them, bar the ones that focus solely on white, like Picpoul du Pinet, for example, are about 90% red production. So it really is the significant color of wine style in this area. Now, each appellation, be it Languedoc or then the specific ones like Corbière or Minevoire or Fitou, will list the principal grape varieties that must be used and other allowed grape varieties. Okay, so here we go on the next slide. So therefore, in all cases, Languedoc AOCs for red wines require a minimum of 2 varieties, including 1 or more of the principal varieties. In the picture here, I'm showing you grapes here of Grenache, Syrah, Mourvèdre, which are very common in this area. Most of the regulations here in Languedoc give an upper limit for any one variety. So, for example, it might say something like maximum 70% or maximum 80% or something along those lines, meaning really that genuinely all AOC wines here are blends because there is no maximum of 100. The AOC may also set minimum and maximum amounts for any single variety or combination of varieties. And different percentages also can be set for the varieties in the vineyards and in the final wine. So there may be differences between what's happening in the viticulture and then the vinification. So, for example, 50% may be that the AOC states for that variety in the vineyard, but only 40% of that variety in the final wine, allowing the producers, the winemakers, a little bit of flexibility. So the over crop of that, the grapes that aren't used, could be used for other productions, maybe things like rosé or IGP, or maybe if you want to have a bit of experimental fun for a bit of Vin de France, for example. And we'll go through some of these, of course, as we go through the specific AOCs. And here is a bit more of a complicated slide. And what I'm showing you here is, of course, the whole area. So this is the Languedoc area, and it includes the departements of the Gard, which is below Lozère, and Hérault and Aude, and then the Pyrénées-Orientales. So this is the whole sort of area, pretty much stretching from near Nîmes all the way down towards the Pyrenees mountain range. And on the right-hand side, it's got the major varieties. The famous trio, the Holy Trinity, the GSM, Grenache, Syrah, and Mourvèdre are the major varieties. So what we're telling you here is that nearly all of the AOCs that one finds here require, first of all, Grenache Noir. That's the major one. And then many others require, on top of that, Syrah and Mourvèdre. So these are very important, with an exception being the area that I've identified here towards the west. This is what we call the Atlantic corridor of Languedoc, and there are two AOCs which sit right to the west and northwest of the beautiful fortified medieval town of Carcassonne, and we have Cabad and Malapert. So these two are actually dominated by Bordeaux varieties. We call this the Atlantic corridor. So that's a bit of an odd one out, but everything else really is about Grenache, Syrah, and Mourvèdre. Of course, other varieties are permitted as well. And we have a little bit of, I mentioned Grenache Noir is pretty much the dominating variety, but in places like Corbière and then Fitou, so this is in the Aude department. So there's Carcassonne again. Remember, we were just mentioning that we had just above here Cabard and Malapierre, which are the Atlantic corridor. Well, here in places like Corbière, which is a real quite large area, it's one of the largest AOCs in France, going down towards the old Roman city of Narbonne today, all this area, and then Fitou down here as well, which has two non-contiguous areas. Actually, the Carignan is the principal grape variety here, and nearly all other appellations, it's an option. So we have already spoken on a previous series that Carignan is a key grape variety here, because it kind of is a little point of difference for this area. Well, the real point of difference are these AOCs of Corbière and Fitou, who list it really as a principal grape variety, and other areas only list it as an other grape variety. And then just a few things that can differ here. Subzones. The rules for subzones, or sub-appellations as we may call them, may be different to the parent appellation. Okay, so we have an example here on the screen. So here is the Sea of Béziers. The Mediterranean is just right here. And if you go in towards the foothills of the Montagne de Noir from Béziers, you have the nice village here, area of AOC Saint-Chinian. Okay, and then there are two crus within Saint-Chinian, one of which is called Roquebrune, and then the other is Berlue, and these have differing rules. So the Roquebrune Saint-Chinian cru requires a higher total percentage of Grenache Noir, Syrah, and Mourvèdre than the standard village. And this is important because, of course, this is one of the factors that may separate the crus, which we find across Languedoc, from the standard village levels. Each AOC also sets maximum yields, which typically lies around 45 to 50 hectolitres per hectare. Some of the subzones or sub-appellations that we've just been talking about, so the two here of Saint-Chinian, for example, can be around 40 hectolitres per hectare. The large encompassing regional appellation of Languedoc AOC allows around 50 hectolitres per hectare for reds, 60 hectolitres per hectare for whites. And of course, with this slightly more higher yield, this could lead to a slight sort of lower intensity in those wine styles. In many of the individual appellations, the villages, for example, the average yield in practice is actually well below these figures, often around 35 to 40 hectolitres per hectare, due to the climatic conditions that we've covered previously on a series here on the Languedoc section. We're talking about good sunlight, but the key things about dramatic reduction in yield is low rainfall and then, of course, very windy conditions, which can desiccate the grapes, dry the grapes. A little bit on a working example around Languedoc. So just putting all of that into practice for you. I'll go through this step by step. So the big encompassing Languedoc AOC, the major one here, which really does cover a lot of the IGP area, stretching really from around Nîmes all the way down to the Pyrenees. It's quite a large, expansive area. The principal varieties are Grenache Noir, Syrah, and Mourvèdre. Okay, so principal. Let's get some underlining in action here because we quite like to do this, don't we? That's a key word that we must identify, remember. The principal varieties, because there often are then regulations that stipulate that principal varieties must be included. And look at the second line down. A minimum of 2 varieties must be used, including at least one of the principal varieties. And this is really to protect the tradition of the certain AOC and style of that area. No variety may be more than 80% of the blend, therefore protecting the concept that it is a blend. The total combination of the principal varieties must make up a minimum of 40% of the blend. So the core of the wine really needs to be from these principal varieties, which are of course very traditional and stylistically important. The other varieties, in this case for Languedoc, Cinsault, Carignan, and some other local varieties, not too important for your certificate, may not make up more than 30% of the blend. Because there's quite an added on extra list here, there's quite a lot therefore that could change the style and the tradition of the area. So they're trying to protect it by putting down these fundamental rules and regulations. Okay, so regional appellation, and then I'm going to go into named appellations and then sub-appellations. So first of all, regional appellation is what one sees here. It's the Languedoc AOC. The wines that come from Languedoc AOC typically have a medium intensity with often things like blackberry, red plum fruit, medium tannins, medium acidity, medium or towards high alcohol, and medium body. The wines typically are acceptable to good and normally are inexpensive to mid-priced. There's some very, very good value wines to be found in this appellation, but of course, it is sometimes a little bit like a needle in a haystack. There is a fair large production under the regional banner. Then we have named appellations, and we are identifying here as our example, Corbière. So the wines here in named appellations, and of course you can list loads of them, Fougères, Saint-Chinian, Minevoire, and so on. We are listing Corbière here as the example. Typically medium to medium plus intensity from the village named appellations, with same sort of fruit, black, berry, red plum, often due, of course, to the grape mix, with often sort of a herbal note, a bit of that garrigue character, that lavender, that kind of rosemary note, medium tannins, medium plus acidity, medium to high alcohol, and medium plus to full body. Some of the wines, of course, as well, certainly when we're getting to the more kind of mid-range to premium, will have possibilities of having a bit of oak. But normally we're looking at good to very good with some outstanding examples and anywhere from inexpensive to premium. Now we're going to keep with Corbière because we're going to talk about a sub-appellation next. So sub-appellations are a little bit like in the United States when you have nested AVAs. So a little bit of a subzone within an area. And here you've got Corbière-Butzenin, as you can see. We'll go into this in much more detail when I go through the Corbière video, but the wines of these sub-appellations tend to be towards pronounced in intensity, medium plus or high in tannins, and they will have much more sort of concentration of fruit, often quite a lot of oak integration. The acidities are generally quite high. These are quite powerful expressions, generally speaking. Normally, we're looking at around very good to outstanding and normally mid-price to premium for these wine styles. So let's have a look at one of these wonderful Google Earth videos. We're going to actually take, it's a bit of a historical tour, looking at a bit of the architecture here. It's not so much about the AOC, but it gives you a good idea of the landscape. There's the south of France, and we're going to look at the city of Nîmes, of Roman origin, sitting towards the eastern side. And it's an important area, bordering Rhône and Provence, and also in the Languedoc. And here, a real centerpiece of architecture, the amphitheatre of Nîmes. So this is one of our eastern side cities, and there it is, the gorgeous amphitheatre. Looks like they're having some sort of wine festival inside that. I've been to one of those before. Absolutely beautiful. Now, we're going to retreat and then have a look towards the far other side of Languedoc, because we'll look at the city of Carcassonne, which is a beautiful medieval fortress city, which sits on the Atlantic corridor far to the west. Really beautiful with its wonderful towers and its walkways across a lot of the walls. Gorgeous place to go and visit, Carcassonne, and a lot of the key wine areas sit immediately to the east of that zone. So a couple of the famous cities. The Mediterranean Sea sits to the south, but then to the north is really the southern expanse of the Massif Central, which is called the Black Mountain, the Montagne de Noir, and this forms the northern border. A lot of the key AOCs, which produce a lot of the top wines, certainly at the premium level, are in the foothills of this Montagne de Noir. So it's a good idea just to have a good sort of feel for that. Just going to show you quickly now the Languedoc AOC in blue that kind of stretches really from and around the city of Nîmes towards the Rhône River. And then down past along the Montagne de Noir, Carcassonne, and down into Roussillon as well. And we've just gone through all of the rules and regulations behind that city. So there you go. There's your wonderful video. So there you go in terms of the introduction to Languedoc and then also Languedoc AOC itself. We're now going to go into, on part 3 onwards, we're going to go into the specific named appellations and then also, if they have them, some of those sub-appellations. So please do join me for part 3, part 4, part 5, part 6. All of those are only available on my e-learning portal. You can go across to that on www.winewithjimmy.com and sign up to get all of that exclusive content. Plus, there's many other helpful things there to really get you through your wine qualifications and examinations. As always, any comments, questions, or concerns, you can get in touch. You can do so by commenting on this video below on this world of YouTube, or you can utilize the social media at the bottom of every slide. And thank you so much for everybody who does get in touch with their thanks and praise. It's really keeps me going, putting on all of this content. And if you find yourself in the United Kingdom, I know it may be that we're a slightly scary place now because we're no longer a part of Europe, but to be honest, we are very, very welcoming. Please do come and see me at one of my establishments for a class, a glass, or a bottle. I've been Jimmy Smith. Ciao for now.